Hello and welcome to VDP Episode 1, the podcast designed to help you get to know your teachers a little bit better. I'm your host, Grant.
And I'm your host, Ignacio.
Today, our guest is Mr. Sullivan. Now, because of COVID, it's been a lot harder than normal to get to know our teachers this year. So today, Mr. Sullivan, we are going to be asking you a few questions to help students at DTech get to know you a little better as a person. Are you ready?
Sounds great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
So, Mr. Sullivan, tell us a little bit about what you do at DTech.
So I teach English is my number one job. I've taught 9th and 10th grade English at DTech. I also teach design lab, some other things that are a little more invisible. I work with English learners. I have been the advisor to the Dragon and was part of the original VDN. So that was been a big high point for me in my career here at DTech, I think. And then also a little bit with the yearbook. I'm the advisor of the surf club. I don't know. I try to put my toes in as many pools as I can get them in.
Do you want to tell us a little bit? You said surf club. I've heard of that before. You want to tell us a little bit about like how, I don't think that's going on right now, right?
We haven't been the best at getting our forms filled out this year, I think. There's been leadership changes like every year when students graduate. So it's just part of the whole part of being a club. But we still like surf, and still do stuff and talk to each other. This year, Teddy Noble's the president. So we're still actually working on trying to get a second semester meetup going. But I have surfed with Teddy a couple of times this year, surfed with a couple of other seniors too. Teddy even paddled out to Mavericks. So me and Anthony Mosso and Leiden, graduate from last year, we're all out there to kind of watch him.
Yeah, I remember Leiden's graduation video was him out on a surfboard, right? He did a video of him. That was very interesting to watch.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, the surf club's great. We're not competitive about it. We don't compete like some surf clubs do. But just a chance to get in the water, see each other outside of our school environment and share a common interest.
Do you guys go surfing at Lindemar?
They do. I've never met up with any of the surf club members at Lindemar. I live really close to the jetty in Half Moon Bay, so that's kind of our typical meetup spot. Surfed other places like Miramar, mostly Half Moon Bay with the team.
I haven't done a lot of surfing in Half Moon Bay, but I used to live in Pacifica, and so I went to Lindemar Beach a ton.
Yeah. How's your new spot?
It's nice. I'm here in Foster City. We have the lagoon in my backyard, which is super cool to have, but you can't really surf on it. I was never super great at surfing in the first place.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going to be hiking with our exploration class over there. Our first hike leaves from DTech and we walk around the Belmont Slough.
Oh yeah, tell us a little bit about the hiking D Lab.
Yeah, so I don't know. I've, like everyone else, trying to figure out ways to still have fun and follow the rules. So my first thought was it would be so cool if we could go to like skate parks and have a skateboarding class. Like as a high schooler, that was what was important to me. And I don't feel like anybody really valued that interest. In fact, I think they looked down on us for it. Luckily, the world has changed, and us skateboarders are now adults and have kind of asserted our influence. You can see it in all the skate parks that have been built over the last 2 decades. But that didn't work out because of going into like a full lockdown. I wanted it to be kind of like a for sure thing. So we walked it back a little bit to just being hiking, just going out into some of the open spaces that are around us. We live in a beautiful place. So we're hiking, like I said, Belmont, and then we'll hike at Bear Island, which is just south of DTech. It's near the Redwood City boat ramp. Then we'll hike at Sawyer Camp Trail, which is on Crystal Springs. I recently have been bird watching over there, and there's bald eagles that nest there in the wintertime. So hopefully we'll see a bald eagle, which is like kind of crazy that you don't see them anymore here, but they used to be pretty abundant. Yeah, and then a whole nother week of that, we're gonna hike in at Edgewood, at Huddart Park in the redwood trees, and then out here on the coast side at Wavecrest.
Awesome, Mr. Sullivan. We were actually really interested in your hiking intercession. One question that we just wanted to ask you was how do you intend to keep the students safe?
That's a great question. You're not the first person to ask. From and I'm really glad that people are concerned, because that just shows that we're going to have the right motivations to do the right things. Parents have been concerned, other students, myself. So, naturally we'll be following guidelines of social distancing and wearing masks at all times. I know you might have heard, like, people are now saying, like, wear 2 masks, wear 3 masks. You could even wear 4 masks. But, we'll definitely be enforcing that people have a mask on, that they're staying 6 feet apart. Like, classes are small right now, so it's me and Loneman are doing this. We have 14 students each, so a total of 28. The idea that we've first had, and we could definitely iterate on this if we need to, but is that one of us kind of take on like a more of a jaunty pace and be at the front, and the other one kind of the more relaxed pace and be at the back. And that way kind of we can, I don't know if you know me as a teacher, I'm not like an in your face kind of guy. But there will be like kind and gentle reminders to follow the rules. It's really important that we do that so that we can keep doing these things. And I think students know that.
I remember I used to be a Boy Scout, and they had a rule of you go as fast as the slowest hiker, I think is the way we kind of made sure nobody was getting left behind or anything, which I'm a pretty fast hiker, so that could be kind of frustrating, but that's a super important thing to kind of keep in mind, especially with COVID.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, we're a group. We identify as DTech, right? So we have to also kind of like portray that and show that we're here to support each other, first and foremost, and also that we are like the great people that we are with our actions.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I know in Pacifica there's a lot of really good hiking trails. There's Maury Point and a couple really good ones back there, but that's probably kind of too far from D-Tech.
Yeah, Wavecrest is our like big reach, I think. It's at the end of 92 at Smith Field, where they have the baseball fields in Half Moon Bay. You might have been to Cameron's, where they have the double-decker English style red buses.
I was just Googling Wavecrest. Oh, wow, this looks like a really cool place. I've never been, but it looks like there's a lot of really cool tree formations or something.
Yeah, so I mean, it's called a coastal prairie, so like a flat prairie land on the coast. The crazy part about it as an open space is that there are tons and tons of birds of prey there. So raptors. So we see red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks all the time. Crazy thing, right now I'm looking out my window and there's literally a red-shouldered hawk sitting on my fence that's like 15 feet away from me. Like, insane. Insanely close. But out there's like red-shouldered red-tailed hawks, there's northern harriers, there's kites, white-tailed kites, American kestrels, turkey vultures, like, you name it, you name the raptor that's around here and it's there. There's been bald eagles and golden eagles there, and they're all just like killing gophers and mice and voles, and it's pretty awesome. I think like birds of prey are definitely the birds that are popular. People like to see hawks and eagles.
Yeah, they're just really, those types of animals are just super. I don't know why, but it seems like just we as humans are super intrigued by things that are fast and kind of dangerous and interesting like that. And those birds are super beautiful, but also they kind of have that almost air of respect, I guess, around them just because they're so good at doing what they do, you know?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. I like how you said that. Yeah, they're kind of menacing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you made me think of another one I didn't even mention, the peregrine falcon, which is
Yeah,
actually the fastest living thing on the planet.
that's crazy. And especially when you think, what is it? They can go like 200 miles an hour, right?
Like
It's something nuts.
250 diving. Yeah.
That's insane. And especially that they can go that fast and still maintain control and hit their mark when they want to. It's not just this kind of random dive bomb into who knows what. Like they can maintain control and actually steer where they're going. It's just crazy.
Right. And then just a big puff of feathers after they hit another bird.
Yeah, yeah, there's no chance of any other bird getting away.
Totally. There's a funny story. So I don't know. I don't really consider myself a birder for how as many people might identify me as that. I'm very interested in birds, but I'm also just interested in the natural world in general and try to recognize what's around me. But there are all these birders out here in on the coast side because there was this gull that had come all the way from like the Arctic and Siberia. It was like lost, right? It wasn't supposed to be here. And all these people are like causing all this crazy traffic, pulling off on the side of the road, just trying to see this bird. And they one day there are so many people looking at it that they kind of spooked it and it started to fly away and a peregrine falcon fell out of the
Oh
sky
no.
and murdered it in front of all those
Oh.
people. And it was just like, oh my god, see, like you're not loving nature, you're actually like getting in the way.
I mean, they got to see at least nature kind of doing its thing. You know, that's a very authentic experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for that, I think that's the right way to see it too, for as many people that were kind of like maybe shocked and maybe appalled even at like,
Yeah,
yeah, we can't anthropomorphize these animals, right? They do what they do.
I think there is certainly a very big disconnect from nature, especially where we live, just because, you know, it's all houses and the main exposure we even get to nature is through probably documentaries and stuff. And so it feels like there's sort of a disconnect in a sense just from how nature actually works. Like these aren't just cute little birds that can go fast. These are killing machines.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you're noticing that too, because I mean, I guess that's my number one agenda is like I see kids having the same experience as me in many ways as a young person, but also maybe missing some of the stuff, like maybe a little bit of that I don't know, kind of I'm gonna do something bad gleam in your eye, like I'm gonna go skateboard in a parking structure that I know I'm not supposed to be there, but like it's still I'm gonna do it anyway because I want to just engage my environment.
Yeah, that sort of
Um,
adventure.
yeah, and I think like I wish I would have known that I can like go hiking and go. I don't know. I guess I did know that in some ways, but um, I lived in a place that was even more paved. Like I grew up in Southern California in North County, San Diego, and I watched kind of all these like open spaces disappear and become housing
Mhm.
communities. And I guess like they really made me kind of appreciate it. I also love to fish, so I would, some of the places that I would fish disappeared, became housing communities. When I was like 18, my favorite thing to do was sneak onto golf courses and fish in the ponds when they were closing, catch
That's
bass
really cool.
fish.
Speaking of just like adventure and stuff, I think you and I actually have a lot in common there. I just this weekend drove down to Santa Cruz and there's a couple caves down there. Have you
Hmm.
heard about those caves? There's
No.
yeah, on the UC Santa Cruz campus, there's two caves. I visited them both. One is Empire Cave and one is called Hell Hole.
Hmm.
And I did not go in Hellhole, but I was crawling around in some in the Empire Cave this weekend, and it's really just kind of nuts how these things form, these geological formations, to me at least. And so that's sort of my adventure, going and crawling in dangerous places I probably shouldn't be in.
That sounds so cool. I just looked it up. It looks safe enough to do.
Empire Cave certainly is. The Hellhole one is a little more sketchy, but it's still like, there was a rope at the entrance going down when I got there, because you
I
you have
see
to,
that picture.
yeah, you have to climb the side of this hill just to get to it. And I didn't even see it when I was up on the hill, probably 20 feet away from the entrance to this place, and I had no idea it was there. It was only when my dad kind of pointed it out that I realized, oh, I'm, 20 feet away from the entrance. And I did not go in. I put a foot in, but because there was just this sheer vertical drop kind of straight down.
Yeah, it looks like you have to like belay or
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I forgot my headlamp. I was super disappointed. I forgot my headlamp, so I couldn't go in that one. But
super
yeah.
cool. It reminds me of I lived in Vietnam, and when I lived there, they actually discovered what is now the biggest cave in the world.
Is that the underwater cave?
Um,
I feel like I've heard about underwater caves in Vietnam. That could be totally.
it is called Hang Son Doong. It's the largest known cave in the world, which is like, they found it in 2013 or 12 or something like that. So there might be another one just as big if they're still finding stuff like that.
Did you ever visit?
No, I did. It's like kind of up north of where I was living. I was living in Ho Chi Minh City, but I did go in the like what you're describing and what I was kind of looking at the caves, pictures of caves in Santa Cruz. It reminds me of the Coochie tunnels, which are man-made, but a bunch of underground tunnels that during the Vietnam War were used to kind of hide and
Those are still around?
surprise attack from. Yeah,
That's
really,
astounding that
really
those
crazy.
things have lasted that long.
Oh yeah, they're like 3 stories of like tunnels and networks at some points. They all have um, like signage, like street signs inside of them, so that you can like figure out where to
You'll
go.
get
They're
lost.
that complex. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah,
man.
I'm actually super glad you brought up living in Vietnam. We just wanted to ask what your experience was like living there.
Oh man, I miss it. I miss it a lot. That's that's the first place I had like uh, my own English class. I lived in Korea before that, and I taught language, but I didn't. It wasn't like the same, Like we go to our English class, and we're not learning to speak English. We're learning to like write and become better readers and that kind of stuff. So it was the first time I ever had my own class of that. I taught at an international school. So I taught eighth grade students in an American style school, but in a different country.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I really had a great time there. Um, changed my life a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like absolutely crazy teaching kids from other countries how to speak English. Would you say it's like similar to how we have like Spanish class at DTech or completely different?
So that's what like living in South Korea was like. It was like how we study Spanish. They were studying English. But then when I was in Vietnam, it was just like what we do. I had like um, a lot of similar things. I did like that's where I first came up with like journaling every day. So like the stuff that you're doing now is kind of you know a much more tried and tested version of what that was like.
Hmm. I wish I had the patience to journal every day, or I guess the self control. I think that's proven to improve your memory or something, right? There's a lot of good stuff that comes with that.
Well, there's definitely something to the somebody kind of forcing you to do it is kind of a blessing, I think. Like I've had a lot of students come back to me and say that too. Like, I didn't love like the idea of journaling at first, but I started to. This is me in that tunnel.
Oh, wow, that looks like it could get claustrophobic for somebody who had claustrophobia.
Yeah, right. It's a crazy picture of me in this tiny tunnel.
How old are you there?
I was 27, maybe 26.
And you lived in Korea before that?
Yeah, this is actually at the end of my first year living in South Korea. We were there for an entire year, and we kind of like, just did normal stuff, and were able to save up some money, and we traveled. We being me and my wife. My wife's Ashley Sullivan. She actually teaches for Oracle Education Foundation, so some listeners will know who she is. Um, we traveled for nearly 6 months after our first contract year in South Korea. We went
Wow.
to 11 countries.
Wow, 11 countries?
Yeah, it
So
was awesome.
you're quite the man of the world.
It was kind of like, I don't know, like follow your dreams, go do what you say you're going to do. Like that's all it takes. I don't know. Like it's not as simple as that, but it kind of is. Like anyone with a college degree pretty much could get a job in a place like Korea or Thailand or Japan, or you name it over there. They're looking for language instructors, and it's a great way to see the world and have a place to live and get a paycheck while you do it.
Did you have to learn Korean or Vietnamese or?
Well, like, yeah, to like get by, but not like I cannot speak Korean or Vietnamese. I would never claim that. I can get in a taxi cab and tell them where to go. I can go to a restaurant and make sure I eat my fill. But I can't have a conversation about my feelings.
Okay. How I want to that kind of makes me curious. Can you sort of, because I'm at least at the point in my life where I'm starting to consider, what I want to do for the future, what that's going to look like. Can you sort of give me a rundown of, you know, your, let's say, leaving high school to kind of now, just a brief synopsis of that?
Yeah, I love this question. And um, like, I think it's important to realize that there's not like a way to do it.
Hmm.
Um, and that like, if lots of ways are valid, and like some of the ways that seem like they're the best ways might end up not being a very good way for different people. I personally, like, I don't know, the people in my family have all gone to like great colleges, right? You name it. Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, USC. I don't know. My sister went to Cal. I went to Cal Poly even for grad school, but like, I don't really think that's very important. All these places have generally the same information. It's kind of who you meet there that is the selling point.
Hmm.
Um, at at 18 years old, I was very interested in skateboarding, in snowboarding, and in surfing. I had a job at the grocery store in the meat department. So you know, like some people have that job their whole life. So I kind of felt like, like, I don't really need to do much as long as I can do those things and I have this job. But I also felt like this nagging pressure to go to college. Like it kind of
Hmm.
felt like I was supposed to do that, and if I didn't do that, it would be not only disappointing to like my family, but maybe to myself.
Yeah.
So I was going to community college. I was doing okay. Um, I did well in some things and less well in other things, and it kind of like mirrored my high school experience. Like I've always been really interested in English class, and I always did pretty well at writing. I was kind of like what I was good at, I guess, what I gravitated towards and enjoyed the most. Um, so, 2.5 years later, I've kept going to community college, and I've kind of kept the same job. And I was like, well, like I got to keep doing all that stuff. I like surfed all the time, and I kept going snowboarding on the like in the winter time. And I was like, I'm bored here. I really do need to go do something, and I have these units and I can transfer to a university, and I'm going to try it. So I went to Sonoma State. is what I ended up deciding to do. I got into a few places. I got into San Francisco. I got into um, Cal State San Marcos, which is really close to my home, and Sonoma. And that's kind of all I applied to. I applied to Cal Poly, but at the time I was applying for spring semester, and Cal Poly is a quarter system. They and they weren't accepting transfer students except for in fall. So long story short, I went to Sonoma and I hated it. I didn't know anybody. I was really bored. It was a really rainy year. You know, we have those, sometimes we just have really rainy years in California, and it was rainy. It was hard to go outside and do anything. So kind of like just bad circumstances. My sister went to Cal. I'd hang out there all the time. Um, Met some of my best friends that year. But then I decided to go back to San Diego, and I had gotten into Cal State San Marcos. So I ended up going there, and I finished my last like year and a half there. So that kind of made me, like, all that moving around and stuff made me take 5 years to finish. Um, I'm glad I did it. I slowed myself down. I started to care more about what I was doing, started
Hmm.
to be a little bit more mature than I think I was at that point. And there was nothing wrong, I think, with what I was doing. Like, I was interested in what I was interested in. I wouldn't really give that back. Those were like amazing experiences, and it was fun to just be like kind of like young and, you know, only as responsible as I needed to be.
Yeah.
Um, but then I really did find like the benefit of like digging into my schoolwork. And so after I graduated like, I had a 3.89, I think, in my major. I like got almost all A's in every single English class I took. I was like, I like this. Like, I'm good at this.
And
This is probably what I should do.
you were an English major, right?
Hmm.
Okay.
But life being what it was, I don't know. Like, I didn't know how to get a job doing that. My internship was at Transworld Skateboarding magazine, and they offered me a job, but they weren't going to pay me. Like, it was basically like, here's a job, we'll give you like $10,000 a year.
Wow. Ooh. Yeah. Okay.
You know, like, it's basically like, go move in with your mom and dad and, and work for us.
Yeah.
And that wasn't very interesting to me. I went and got a job with this other guy selling mortgage loans.
Hmm.
That wasn't interesting to me either. It took about 2 years. I even ended up going back to the grocery store. I worked for Trader Joe's for like 6 months. And I was like, what am I doing? Like, if I don't know what I can do and I can't make any money doing this, like, everybody else who studies what I studied, like, goes to grad school. So
Hmm.
I should do that. So I ended up at Cal Poly, and I think like since then my life has had a pretty focused direction. At Cal Poly I was a writing tutor. I worked as a reference library assistant. I was just like into like research and you know, reading and studying and writing, and I think after all that like tutoring and stuff, I realized that I probably wanted to be a teacher. So at the end of my master's program, I was thinking about what to do. My buddy, who I had met at Berkeley when I was up at Sonoma, was living in Korea, and he's like, "Dude, you should move to Korea. I'll get you a job teaching English out here. Like, you have a degree in English, you have two of them. Like,
Hmm.
you'll love it." And I was like, "Cool, all right." So at the time, I was dating my wife, and I told her, "We gotta break up. So
Oh.
I'm moving to the other side of the planet." And she's like, "Wait, what?" At first she was like, "What, you don't like me?" I'm like, "No, it's not that. I mean, do you want to move to Korea?" And she's like, "I don't know, maybe." Like, "What are you doing?" And so my wife studied child development, and I was like, "Well, I'm teaching. I'll be teaching kids." She's like, "Well, how hard is it to get a job?" I was like, "I don't know. I'll call them." So I called Korea, and I was like, "Hey, my girlfriend wants to come too. Is that cool?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure, she can come."
What about you said called Korea?
Yep.
Now, what's their
That's
phone
kind of
number
how it went
exactly?
down. Yeah. It kind of felt like that, you know, like I didn't know these people at all. I'd never been to the country. Like now I feel so silly, but I had no idea what the difference between Korean writing and Japanese and Chinese writing was. I couldn't tell you which one was which at that point. Now I'm like, oh man, I was so naive. But yeah,
That's a huge like leap of faith to just kind of pack up and go.
yeah, it was. And then at the same time though, like it was so safe. Like they were paying for my apartment, they were
Hmm.
flying me there. They were giving me a job where, I go to work 5 days a week and I get a paycheck every week and I have money and like I don't know, man, like it was like somebody was holding my
Security.
hand at becoming an adult.
Yeah.
Now, were you in Seoul or where were you in Korea?
That was a big point of contention for my buddy. So he lived in Seoul and he's like, come out here, it's going to be great. And then so when I'm like getting hired, they're like, well, you could go to Seoul or you could go to this other city, Busan. It's on the beach. It's the second biggest city in
Hmm.
Korea. And I was like, well, I want to live on the beach.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, buddy.
Yeah. And then my buddy was like, how am I ever going to see you? That's 3 hours away.
Wow,
We hung out. There's a high speed train.
that's good. I imagine he probably would have been pretty upset if you were just like, "Oh, thanks for letting
Well,
me come to
he was
Korea."
kind of upset. We didn't see each other that much, not nearly as much as we would have.
Yeah, I was just thinking. It seems like you were talking about, going to college and how there's kind of a pressure to go. It seems like I don't know how it was in the past, obviously, but for me, it seems like it's now basically expected, especially in this area, that you're going to go to college. It's sort
Mhm.
of the norm, and for a lot of people, it's straight out of high school, which I've been thinking recently. That's a little insane in a sense. It's like how is a high school student gonna know that they want to be an economist
Yeah.
or you know a coder for the rest of their lives? It just seems to me like I don't know. I feel personally too young, and I haven't ever worked in an office. So how would I would know I want to work in an office for the rest of my life, right? So my question to
Yeah.
you is, what is your kind of take on that?
Well, I guess like in some ways we do just kind of know that stuff, right? Like I knew that about myself. Like my sister was a like high achiever, right? She knew she was going to go somewhere notable when she graduated high school, right? And that's okay
Hmm.
to be that too, I think. But like I wasn't that, and I told my parents like, I don't want you to spend your money on like me going somewhere and not even knowing what to do. And different places kind of like have space for that and don't have space for that too. Like Cal Poly, I don't think is a great school to go to if you're not sure what you're going to do. They want you to declare your major, and if you want to change later, they're like, no. So you got to find the right fit. I think Kathleen's really good at that, at like kind of emphasizing that idea too. Like it's the fit is so much more important than the reputation of the school. And like I said, like these places don't have like a monopoly on knowledge. They don't know things that other people don't know. It's more who you meet.
Yeah, and I imagine the alumni connections too, depending
Hmm.
on what you want to go into.
Totally. Yeah, Cal Poly actually has been great for me in like, who I still hang out with today is usually people that are connections from that experience in my life. Um, like my best friends that I see most of the time are people from there. But that's not
Okay.
it, you know. I don't know. I think part of it is like fail fast, fail forward, keep learning,
Yeah,
make mistakes.
yeah. For
I
me, I'm
definitely, sorry, Grant, go ahead.
I was just gonna say for me, for me, I'm just a little personally like my fear is I am not sure as a person that I would want to go straight to a university if I'm not certain of what I want to do just because of like debt, you know?
Oh yeah, I highly recommend going to community college, even if you can get into the regular college. Like, if you want to go to Cal Poly, there's nothing wrong with going to Cuesta. Like,
Hmm.
Cuesta will help you get into that school, and they have, they have agreements with them, and the biggest, most ironic thing that I see is that this some of the same people are teaching at both places.
Yeah.
So there's really no like monopoly on that knowledge.
Yeah, I feel like growing up, I've always been expected to kind of like consider reputation over other things, and I'm glad that that wasn't the case for you, and hopefully, um, more people realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to knock anywhere too. Like, UCLA is great. My mom went there. um, I don't think it's for everyone though.
No, yeah, my sister went to a smaller college in the city, which eventually closed, but she still has the same knowledge, and like she was the first in my family to go to college, so I just see I can do that or I can do something else, and I just have no idea where to go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's okay. Like, when you're at 12th grade and you start to apply and you start to learn more about these places, I think um, you'll have a feel for what feels right for you. I know my wife went to Cal Poly from freshman year on, and she thought she really wanted to go to UC Santa Barbara. She thought like that was the place for her. That's where some of her friends were going. They had a great reputation. Um, and then she visited Cal Poly and realized like, oh no, I feel it. Like, this is calling me. Like, this is the place, even though it didn't have quite as good as a reputation at that time as UCSB. Wasn't probably what wasn't even as well known as a great school.
To me, it's crazy how I never made the connection from her to you. I had her last intercession.
Yeah, do you see that's her right there in that picture at Machu Picchu with me?
You said you went to 11 different countries, right? Were you
Yeah.
teaching? I imagine you weren't teaching English in all of those.
No, no, just South Korea. And then, so the first place we went to was Vietnam, which was kind of foreshadowing. But I didn't know I'd ever live there at that point. Cambodia, Laos, and then Thailand. And then from there, I was supposed to go to Myanmar, but at that time, it was really getting a visa was really complicated. So then we flew to Dubai. We were just there on a layover, but we were able to leave the airport a little bit. I didn't even count that one, but
Did you see Burj Khalifa?
no, but it wasn't built yet.
Oh, okay.
My friend, so that's actually a funny tie-in. My friend who was in Korea had left and was there working on that building. He was an architectural engineer.
That's
Um,
wild.
yeah, kind of random connection. I'm glad you mentioned that. But then to Morocco,
Hmm.
spent like half a month, a little more than that in Morocco. Took a ferry over to Spain, went to Portugal, um, went to Germany, went to the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, and then back to New York City.
Wow. So I know I've talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people say they want to travel the world as something kind of on their bucket list. I imagine you being sort of fresh out of college probably wouldn't have a ton of money. So I imagine you were probably traveling on a budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How would you recommend if somebody did want to travel the world, but they didn't have a ton of money? What are some kind of tips you would have for them?
Well, don't do it the way I did it. That's for sure. So we were able to save, I think, $8,000 each. Nearly that. We There was a misunderstanding that we didn't understand what was actually going on with our pensions. So we were paying about $100 a month in Korea into a pension that we didn't realize was being matched. We had just been told that we would get all of our money back at the end of the year. So we were expecting to get $1,200, right? And so we go to the pension office and each of us get a check for $2,400. And being the young people who were poor, like we didn't say anything. We just like ran out of there, right?
Hmm.
Thinking we're like Bonnie and Clyde, but it was our money. We had, been matched by the program, so we had this like extra $1,200. We had planned to, I think, have like $5,000 each, and we ended up saving a little bit more. So we're sitting pretty nicely to go on this like half a year adventure. Um, the bad thing that we did was we went to very, very cheap places at
Yeah.
first, and then we went to very, very expensive places at the
Hmm.
end of our journey.
And I was thinking you were like, Morocco and then Germany at the
Yeah.
end, and I was like, dude, that doesn't seem the way people
Or
usually do
New
it.
York City is the last place I
Uh-huh.
visited. Like, it's not cheap.
So my dad actually, he did the whole travel world thing, and he went to some pretty kind of crazy locations. He was in, I think, Kenya at one point, or
Mm,
no, it was Nigeria. He was in Nairobi.
rad.
He went all over, and he has some kind of crazy tales to tell. And so my question for you is, do you have any sort of crazy travel tales that stand out to you that you'd
Oh
like to
man, I
tell?
probably have a million. I mean, that wasn't the end of my journeying either, right? Like, so I went back to Korea after the 6 months. We started another contract, went back for a whole nother year. Um, and then from there, like moved back to Vietnam and have done a lot of traveling. What's the craziest thing that's ever happened to me? I don't know. I almost like wasn't able to get off a train in Morocco because these ladies were screaming at each other and then started spitting at each other, and they were it blocking like the aisle, right? And like I
Oh,
needed to get to this door, and it I waited too long. I should have turned around and gone to the other like end of the car. But the train started moving, and I was gonna like be stuck on this train going to a place I wasn't supposed to go to. So I ended up having to like just push through
yeah.
and get off of that train. Morocco was wild, man. Like, I don't know. Like, my wife has blonde hair and kind of is a sore thumb there.
Yeah.
Wasn't covering her head either. We were just kind of like naive and ignorant, not really like being as culturally sensitive as we probably should have been. But we're not, it wasn't belligerent. It was just,
It's just a super different culture.
yeah, just naivete. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like, probably got ourselves into some situations that we could have avoided.
Hmm.
Um, like this one, we were in a cab, sharing a cab with people, and this guy was like pulling Ashley's hair the whole time. She didn't say anything until we got out of the cab, but I think he was just fascinated by her yellow hair.
It was just so unusual to see.
Yeah,
Oh.
kind of weird,
Even
but
even still, it's really rude.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, I guess like rudeness comes down to like education about other people's expectations.
I don't know. You never pull anybody's hair.
He wasn't like forcibly like beating her up or anything, right? He's just like touching her hair and like feeling it and like pulling on it, kind of thing. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, it's like to anybody who's had that done to them, it's a very invasive thing. I'm not saying it's something that anybody should do, but also like I can understand kind of like
Yeah.
who the guy is. Like, he's not this super villain. He doesn't need to be like even necessarily villainized more than not understanding each other.
Yeah. My cousin, who is this, tall, blonde, white dude, went and lived in China for a year, and people would just walk up to him and take pictures with him like he was some celebrity. But
Yeah, I had
he,
that.
yeah, you had that. I imagine in like Vietnam, maybe, or Korea.
More in Korea. In Vietnam, like, it was a little more complicated, right? We're the Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in Korea, though, for sure, like, people run up to me and go hello, and then run away. In Vietnam, my friend from high school had finished the teacher credential program with us, and he's 6'6" 6'6" tall.
Mhm.
He's 2 meters, right? That's exactly 2 meters.
Wow.
So they called him in Vietnamese Hai Met, which means 2 meters. So he definitely stood out in a country where people are,
Yeah.
not that tall. I thought everybody in Asia was going to be short when I moved to Korea, and like I'm like totally average in Korea. Like most people are like taller than me, or many people are taller than me.
Huh.
I was very naive. Like I really didn't, like I said, I didn't know really anything about where I was going or what I was doing. And that could have been bad, I guess, if like I tell the story in class sometimes, like you got to have an open mind or else you're just gonna stay thinking the wrong things, like
Yeah.
I went there with this kind of, I don't know, like buying into the idea of American exceptionalism, maybe.
Hmm.
Like
What do
we
you mean by that?
Well, there's this idea that Americans are exceptional at things and do things to make the world, different in an exceptional way, and
Okay. Yeah.
it's just not true. And I think we're kind of like sold these stories that are just false. Like I think I kind of had this idea that we invented cars, like which is
Carl
false.
Benz invented cars, right?
Yeah, right. Like Mercedes-Benz invented cars, but we get sold this idea that Henry Ford kind of like made the car what it was. In a way, he did with like the mass production of automobiles, but
Hmm.
I don't know. Or like that we invented the light bulb, like not true, just the certain kind that we got into people's hands.
Yeah.
Um, and
We're
I
good
think
at
that,
that.
yeah, right.
We're
Like
good at
we're good at
making
that.
things bigger.
And I'm not saying we're not like exceptional. Like people in America aren't exceptional at things. Like people in America do exceptional things. I just don't think that like we're like, like
We might take a little more credit than we deserve.
yeah, or like I mean, are we even that like? Is there that much oneness about us? Like we're. I think what's exceptional is that we're so different. Like there's so
Yeah.
many different kinds of people in our country. Um, so I don't know. I guess like a beautiful part of that was that these kind of ignorant ideas that I might have held um, were challenged in a way that allowed me to like grow and accept like different versions of the world and maybe even just question that any version is right and be able to like kind of like go from where anyone's at, and
Yeah.
see how valuable it is or isn't.
Yeah. I'm super curious to hear about like what you learned about others' cultures while you were in all these
Yeah.
countries.
So I have a couple of like things that kind of stuck out to me were maybe like some of the first like challenges I made. Somebody told me in South Korea that I shouldn't be drinking like cold water while I was eating. Like that wasn't good for me. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm eating soup. Like I'm eating liquid. How would water, like there's water in this. It's like mostly water. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. I just had this very like kind of arrogant like understanding of what I thought when they were just trying to offer some like kind criticism that might
Yeah.
benefit my overall health, right? So
I
then
think
I
that
like
I think that
looked it
technically
up.
does have some truth
It is. It's completely true. It's
because
completely
it
true.
dilutes your stomach acid, right? Isn't that what it
Well, it
does?
also like drinking lots of water when you're trying to like eat a meal, which is rich in vitamins and nutrients. You're flushing your system more than it needs to be flushed.
Mm.
Drinking cold water is particularly bad for digestion. Um,
Really?
they were, yeah, like, well, if you think about like your gut temperature, right? Probably like introducing a really cold temperature to your gut that's trying to
Yeah.
like process things is like gonna
You're
cause
kind of
some
messing
issues.
with it.
Yeah. So I mean, just like kind of like stuff like that, like thinking that I kind of like knew what was up. Like I don't know. I think we
Yeah.
all kind of have that like as young people, like, and it's important to have some like confidence in yourself and believe that but like it can't be, exaggerated.
Yeah. How was like the cultural differences in the schools compared to at DTech versus the when you were teaching English?
So yeah, there was corporal punishment in South Korea.
Ooh.
Like kids, they would tell me all kinds of stories, and I even observed it happening in my workplace. I never sent a kid to the office and was like very careful to make sure to, kind of, I don't know, not buy into anything that was going on that really challenged my morals. The
Mhm.
kids told me stories like when they got in trouble, they had to stand in the corner of a room and hold a textbook over their head for like 5 minutes.
Okay, so it's like endurance punishment almost.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, then if you can't do it, then you have to keep doing it.
Ooh.
Um, yeah, there were campaigns in the subway against like beating your children, like corporal punishment for children kind of thing, that were pretty rough pictures of like children that have been excessively harmed by their caretakers.
Yeah.
So I mean that was really like the most challenging thing to me to see. Other than that, and I think that, you know, I was seeing evidence of a shift in the sentiment of the entire population against that kind of thinking. You know, we went through similar things in our own country. With is spanking okay kind of thing. You know, I don't think you
Yeah.
guys hear about it as much these days. It's kind of agreed upon that it's just not okay. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's certainly been a shift in the culture. I mean, I got spanked as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Texas. So everybody gets spanked in Texas. And I think obviously like my parents didn't take it to too much of an extent or anything. It was just
Mm-hmm.
like I think my mom had a spoon or something and she just slapped me on the butt with it if I was being loud in the car or something.
Totally.
And personally, I don't think that was super traumatizing for me, but I can understand how some people would take issue with it more, you know?
Oh, totally. And I guess like it's much more complicated than I think I've kind of made it sound.
Hmm.
You know, consequences and punishments or you know, there's lots of different ways that they can and can't work. And when you know, your grandma hits you with a sandal, it doesn't mean that she's a bad grandma. Like,
Yeah. I think part of it has to do with the difference between, you know, spanking can be too vague for some people. It's like,
mm,
well, I don't think the big issue is my mom hitting me on the butt with the spoon once because I was being noisy. I don't think that's what a lot of people are talking about when they're being against corporal punishment. It's the
mhm.
more kind of brutal ones.
Yeah,
Uh,
these images in the subway were like bruises on
Yeah, yeah,
people's
no, that never
bodies.
happened.
Like, yeah, that's not okay. So I
Okay.
don't know, kind of dark. I don't know why I'm
Yeah, we
like,
shifted.
but yeah, I mean, like definitely cultural differences across the board. I get that just is the one that stands out to me the most. The same kind of thing happened in Vietnam. Like if a kid wasn't doing well, a parent was like, "Well, should I beat them?" Like, well, no. If you're gonna beat them, I'm gonna just change their grade to something better.
Was
Yeah.
there anything, because we're reaching the end of the podcast, I want to end it on a happy note. Was there anything you
Yeah.
saw there that you were like, we should do this here?
Oh, so many things. Like um, like they were one thing in Korea was they were very scientific about like how we learn and like kind of like what processes we need to go through to study and retain information. I still use some of those skills today with like teaching my students like how to note take or how to organize paragraphs, like kind of I think breaking down reading and being able to understand what you're seeing can really help with being able to then go and produce writing on your own that's complicated, organized, and um, you know has all those different aspects to it.
A more scientific approach to kind of how the brain works and how we learn.
Yep. And, like DTech does that too in some
Mm-hmm.
ways. We've worked with UCSF and Stanford neuroscientists about stuff like that, but like not many schools that I've worked in the United States take that approach.
We have a sort of archaic education system in some ways.
Yeah, it's good. It's changing.
It
It's good.
is,
It
for
is
sure.
changing. But yeah, you're right. A lot of it is harkens back to that. What I mentioned earlier about like the assembly line and Ford, and kind of how do we get people who can work on those assembly lines? We don't.
Mm-hmm. It
We don't
was
need that.
training factory workers, right?
Yep.
Hey, Mr. Sullivan, thank you for giving us a good chunk of your time today.
Of
And
course.
another big thank you for, like, I feel like I know you so much better now. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Not sure if it's raining where you are, but hopefully that doesn't keep you up either.
Oh no, it's super nice out. Yeah, thanks so much. It's great chatting with you both. Two legendary DTech students here.
Just started. I'm not legendary yet.
Well, I don't know.
We're talking to a legendary DTech teacher.
We
Oh,
are.
thanks so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you both.
All right. Thank you for your time. This has been super interesting, and I would love to talk to you again sometime in the future.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
Cool. All right. Well, bye-bye.
All right. See ya.
Bye.